So the first step obviously in installing a virtual environment is to go get the software. And in this quick start, I'm going to use VirtualBox because it's very easy to use and it's kind of vendor neutral and so forth, and I really like it. Let's just go to virtualbox.org, and notice once you get there, if you just click on the downloads link on the left side, it'll take you to the downloads page, which is what you see here. And I will just choose the latest version here. There's lots of things to read, by the way, out on all of these websites, and these steps are going to be almost identical, or very similar at least, for almost any kind of virtual machine product that you use. And so what I'll do is just click on the link here, and it's going to ask me, do I want to download? And I just say yes, and I'll save the file. And notice I'm downloading the VirtualBox 316 whatever when executable. And so I won't take you through that process right here, but normally it would just say save file, and I would download this to my disk. I'll jump out to the disk where I've downloaded and saved this, and we'll go from there. Now, as you can see, I've downloaded the file. Here it is, VirtualBox 31659. Here is an ISO that we're going to use later to demonstrate some things, but I'll just simply double click on this, and we will kick off the installation process. And yes, we would like to run this file. And notice we're welcome to the setup wizard. We'll click next. We'll accept the licensing terms. And I'm just going to take the defaults here, and notice this is going to set up VirtualBox USB support, networking, Python support, everything. We won't go through all of those. We'll just click next. We'll take a shortcut on the desktop. We'll leave the launch bar alone. You can take that if you would like. Now, it's given me a warning, and it's telling you that when you install this, it is going to reset your network connection and temporarily disconnect you from the network. So if you're downloading any files, if you're doing anything that requires network access, you may want to wait. We will proceed with the installation, and now the installation is going to take place. Now, this is not going to take up a lot of space. Notice the download that we're using to install this was only roughly 71 megabytes. So it's not going to take very long to install this. At this point, we just kind of sit and watch, stay out of the way, and it's going to copy the new files and actually do the installation. And we'll give it just a second here. And again, I want to stress, whether you're working with Virtual PC or the Windows Virtual PC version for Windows 7 or using VMware Player, it's all going to be generally the same. You're just going to kind of kick off the setup, install that particular software, and then once it's installed, we'll actually go out and create a guest operating system. Now, all the steps are going to be generally the same. You'll just see a few different screens and stuff as you install the software. And so as you notice, the setup is cruising right along here, and notice they're warning you it may take several minutes. You'll see a couple of things flash and pop. And what I'll do here is pause the video and come back and join you as soon as this is completed. Okay, as you can see, my installation is complete, and I can just leave this checked and start VirtualBox after the installation. I'm going to go up here in the background and close that. Then I will click Finish. Just like magic, here you're going to notice VirtualBox opens up, and here we are. We're ready to install our first guest machine. So if you'll join me in the next video, aptly entitled Installing a Guest Operating System, we'll set about that task, and we will install our first guest operating system. So look forward to seeing you in that video. We have installed Sun's VirtualBox application on our computer, and now we want to set up our first guest operating system. There's a couple of ways to do that, and in this particular video I am going to create a virtual machine and install into that virtual machine Windows XP, and I'm going to do it from a disk that has the XP installation files. Now, what I want to do here is go through the wizard, and notice there is a new button right here, and if you'll notice right down here in this section, it tells me that I will create a new virtual machine. So I will click on that, and the wizard kicks off, and it says it's going to guide me through the steps necessary to create a new virtual machine. So I will just click Next, and I need to give this a name, and I'm just going to call it Windows XP. And notice the operating system is Windows, and I can choose a number of different operating systems. The version is XP, and I can choose a number of different Microsoft operating systems, but I will choose XP. Then I'll click Next. Now it's going to ask me, how much memory do you want to allow this particular virtual machine to have access to? Notice I can give it up to 1500 megabytes. The VirtualBox is thinking for me, because if I come over here to the computer and look at properties, you'll notice that I have 4 gigabytes available on my desktop operating system, but it's allowing me to get up to 1500 megabytes here. And so I'm going to pull that up to say 1024, which in English means 1 gigabyte. So I'll hit Next. Now it's going to ask me, what kind of hard disk do you want to use? Do you want to create a new hard disk, or do you want to use an existing hard disk? Now, if I have an existing hard disk, this is going to be a disk file with an extension of VHD for virtual hard disk, or VDI. There's a number of different formats out there, and what this is going to do is create an area on the hard disk on my machine that acts as the hard disk for this particular installation. Well, I'm going to create a new hard disk, and notice it says the recommended size of this hard disk is 10,240 megabytes, which is again 10 gigabytes. Well, I will create the hard disk, and now it's going to ask me some questions. Now it's going to ask me, do I want to do a dynamically expanding storage, or do I want to do fixed size? Real quickly, let me give you the rub here. If I do dynamically expanding, I'm going to give it a size, and it will start out small and grow to 10 gigabytes. If I do a fixed size, I will set it to whatever size it's going to be, and it's going to start out that size, but it will never grow any larger than that. For the most part, if you have the space to spare, go ahead and set it on a fixed size. If you do dynamic, you start off with a much smaller area, and it'll only grow to the size that you set the maximum as on the next screen. However, the dynamically expanding, every time it dynamically expands, it slows your writes down, it slows everything down. So use a fixed size storage is my suggestion. You can do whatever you want. The location on this, notice I can browse out and tell it to put it in the VirtualBox location in hard disks, and I'm actually going to create a new folder to keep from confusing us, and I'll go into the new folder, and I'm going to call the file name here QSVM for Quick Start for Virtual Machines, and it'll set it as a VDI, and I click Save. And so notice it's telling me put in users mark VirtualBox hard disks, new folder QSVM.VDI, and it's going to be 10 gigabytes in size. So I just click Next and tell it to finish. Apparently I don't have enough space, so let me just back up, and let's put this thing out on my iDrive. I will put it on the iDrive just as XP VDI, and hit Next, and this time notice it's going to create it. Now I'm going to leave that error message in there, because if you try to put it somewhere where you don't have the space, it's going to throw an error. And understand, we're setting aside 10 gigabytes of space for this. And so what this is going to do now, notice it's going to take 3 minutes. It's probably going to take longer than that. It is basically going to go through the process of more or less formatting a section of a hard drive for you. It's not going to hurt the hard drive that you put it on, my iDrive right here. It's not going to hurt it at all. It is just simply going to set aside a 10 gigabyte space that's going to emulate a hard disk for this particular machine. So I'm going to pause the video right now and wait for this to complete. Just wanted to jump back in here and check in with you. I want you to notice we're now up to 64% on preparing the virtual hard disk for a virtual machine. And this is probably taking it about 4 or 5 minutes. So this can take you just a few minutes. And obviously, if you use a larger space, say 20 gigs, it's going to take longer. And what I'm actually going to do here is stop this video. This will be part 1 of installing a guest OS from DVD. And I'll join you in part 2. We will have completed creating the hard disk. We will finish creating the virtual machine, and then we'll actually complete the process of installing a guest in that. So step 1 in installing a guest is to create the actual virtual machine environment, and that is just exactly what we're doing with this new virtual machine wizard. And at this point in the process of executing that wizard, we are creating and now setting aside the area for a virtual disk for this particular virtual machine. So join me in part 2 and we will complete this. Welcome to part 2 of installing a guest operating system from DVD. And you will notice we have now completed the process of creating the virtual hard disk that we started in part 1. And now it's giving us a summary of creating our new virtual machine. And it's telling us you're going to create a new virtual machine named Windows XP. The OS type is XP. The base memory that you've set is 1024 megabytes or 1 gigabyte. We can change that later, show you in a separate video. And it's going to have a hard disk to boot this machine up that's 10 gigabytes in size, and the actual disk name is going to be xp.vdi. We can tell where that is a little bit later. And it's telling me now that I can use the settings dialog out here in our administrative tool to change any of these. So I will now click Finish, and you will notice there is our virtual machine. If we try to start this, if we click on this and we say Start, what's going to happen is it's going to say, hey, wait a minute, you've created a new virtual machine, and this is going to help me actually get going. So I'll click Next, and it says select the type of media you want to use for installation. And notice I will say CD, DVD, ROM, and notice the source, I'll grab it from the host drive E, which is my DVD drive, and then I will click Finish. And what this is going to do is wake up the virtual box. It's going to begin to spin up the DVD on my machine, and you will notice that Windows Setup begins to run. So the DVD is spinning right off of the disk media that I had for my Windows XP setup. And I won't make you watch this entire XP setup. It's just a standard installation like you always see. But I want you to notice this again is happening inside this window. We're going to end part 2 of installing a guest from a DVD because you know how to install XP. Just answer the questions, put in the keys and all that sort of thing, and you're good to go. In the next video, I want to show you the same type scenario with a little twist on it. And instead of having to come from a DVD, will come from an ISO file.